All right, we'll kick off. Hello, and thank you for joining us for our masterclass this afternoon. I'm Kerry Brox from the Institute for Learning Performance. Our team have been really excited about being able to do these masterclasses because it's important to us to support our members as well as the wider L&D community. So, and the feedback we're getting on the masterclasses has been great. So we're going to be continuing to do that because it's really important that we help support and focus on areas around L&D capabilities that are going to help you be successful in your roles. So this afternoon's masterclass sort of covers a couple of dimensions, which is design and deliver. So we're ticking a couple of boxes there. And I'm also liking the masterclasses because basically we get to find out a lot more about what some of our members are doing, like Corinne and her area of expertise. So I'll hand over to Bill, our co-host, so he can introduce Corinne for us. So enjoy this afternoon session, and thank you again.
Thanks, Kerry, and welcome everyone. Yeah, I'm really been enjoying putting the master classes together, and the breadth of stuff that we've been able to do so far has been terrific. One of the things that I like to do as well is try to tie things together. And so at the beginning of the year, we had Guion Pereira do something with us on stunning slides, which allowed us to show how we can really present using slides in a different way. Then we had Jana Martens talking about how you can reach out through the screen to connect with people and things like that. And then we had Gerald, of course, taking us through the high-end idea of using video in different ways. When Corinne put herself forward to offer a masterclass using social media or using smartphones and social media for video and things like that, I thought that fit perfectly. It sort of rounded out the kind of process that I think many of us are starting to use. And when we start to combine that with other potential options like platforms like Vidversity and other things, I think we start to see something that's really coming together. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about this. Corinne's got a little bit of introduction of herself as well in her presentations, I know, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. What I think I want to do, Corinne, is just turn it over to you and say welcome and thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I've just got you on gallery for the moment, just so I can see everyone's faces. Debbie, lovely to see. Is that a daughter, granddaughter?
It's granddaughter.
Hello.
And she won't behave for her grandfather.
Of course not.
I just came back from visiting my granddaughter for the very first time. She just came home today here in July.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh,
it's very exciting.
Very special.
So the reason I wanted to connect with you guys face to face now is when I'm sharing the slides, I won't be able to see you. But what I'd like to encourage you to do is I'll stop sort of every chapter or so and just ask if there are any questions. There's a PDF that I've created of the videos that I'll be showing today, just in case there's any issues with Chrome playing things out, and also links to the apps and to equipment that I'll be mentioning today. What I want to say just sort of up the front is those are things that I use and have tested. They're not the only ones. So in the sort of, public broadcaster background sense of things, there are other apps and equipment to try. And also I think my experience is that, you use the equipment that's best designed for the job. And sometimes you get to it a little bit by trial and error, if that's okay. I suppose the nice thing about a lot of the equipment that's available for smartphones is that it's not excruciatingly expensive, which these things used to be. And so you can give it a go and just see. And if it doesn't quite work, it's not a catastrophe and you can probably eBay it anyway. So a little bit about me. I worked as a journalist. I still occasionally commit acts of journalism, but most of my career was spent with the ABC and the BBC World Service in London. I lived just south of Sydney. I came back to Australia 4 years ago, initially to work with Fairfax before Fairfax's business model collapsed. And then I spent some time lecturing, but these days, mostly what I'm doing is consulting. So I teach businesses, NGOs and newsrooms to upskill their staff, primarily to go out and capture short stories about their work. And so that's the context in which I'm doing this today. So you would have seen, or some of you would have seen Gerald's presentation just recently, which was very much about how do you capture content from yourself in your office to your computer, and how do you set up a sort of home-based studio. This is more, how can I think about going and getting content? And I know that those of you who are in Victoria, that's at some point. But, you know, even if you're doing something that's with your colleagues, for example, in the bubble of your colleagues, if you are doing some time at the office, and also when you're forward planning for content creation in 2021, these are the sorts of things that I hope will be useful to you. Okay, so that's the background. So let's get into this screen sharing thing. And you'll see my desktop, I hope. So you can see my desktop there, is that right? So far, so good. Excellent. And then from the beginning. Excellent. Is that gone full screen? Splendid. Excellent. Wonderful. Okay, so this is what we're having a look at in the next sort of 50 minutes or so. Kerry, can you give me a time call when we're sort of 10 minutes away or 15 minutes away from the end, so we've got plenty of time for questions? Fantastic. That's great. Okay. So these are some of my trainees. This was last year, I think. We're working with Médecins Sans Frontières. So they got me in to help teach their comm staff, but also some of their field medics. What they do is they bring people who go into country contexts into the office about once a year or so, and help them to understand how to make a vlog, for example. And so we ran a masterclass as part of that, particularly on using smartphones. So that's before COVID. So I was in Vietnam last year. And just a little bit about me. So I've also worked as a sessional lecturer on this sort of thing at the universities of Sydney and Melbourne. Up until March this year, I was traveling a lot. Now I'm really enjoying doing what I do online. So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to mince through it quite quickly. So smartphones for storytelling. We'll have a look at what the onboard cameras and mics do. Bit of a look at simple equipment that gets better results from the camera than just holding onto it. And also some apps, similar sort of thing. The onboard apps will do X amount, and then if you want it to do a little bit more, then you might put an app on it. App just means it's short for software applications. So the software allows it to do a bit more. 8 tips for successful filming. Filming interviews, this is something people often want to learn. So I've put in some brief tips about that. And then planning your story. So we're not doing content that's just random. You'll get the best results if you've thought a bit about what it is that you want to capture and then plan to get that content and some next steps. So smartphones for storytelling. You can do the following with a smartphone in 2020, which is quite something, I think. We've moved on from what we see on the left-hand side here, the very early camera phones, that's from 20 years ago, through to what you can do now. In 2017, Time magazine hired a Brazilian photographer to do a series of portraits of women who were the first in their field. And the fun bit about that was it was the first time they'd ever had a front page featuring shots taken on an iPhone. A year later, this magazine Glamour, which is a bit like, I guess, New Idea or Harper's Bazaar, somewhere in between, they did a Glamour cover shot with an Android. So we're at the point now where the cameras are good enough. Similarly, let's click that. For social videos, so video that can go on social media, but also on television. The PDF that I'll send you has got these videos in full on it. So you'll be able to watch all of these. The one on the left is on Twitter. The one on the right is from Facebook. We will take a quick look at the first one just to give you an idea of what's possible.
This woman had a simple idea for her street.
Closing the road to cars for a couple of hours at a time so that we could give over the space to children.
This isn't a one-off street party. This street in Bristol plays together every Tuesday. It means kids spend less time trapped indoors, and adults can make friends with neighbours. Alice thinks it's an easy, cheap way to tackle childhood obesity and social isolation.
It's really brought our community together.
It's really good because we make lots of friends in the street.
They can look back and have some of what I had because I always played out, but obviously times have changed.
So I'll just pause that there. You can see that there was one long shot, but then there are lots of those sort of shorter shots that we associate with television news and current affairs. And so the quality of this material, this also ran not just on social media, but on BBC television, is good enough for TV. It's just really thinking about what are the techniques and also the equipment that you might use to capture that sort of result. So that's a couple years old now. That was an iPhone 6S, I think, or a 7. Dougal Shaw, who's the journalist that's produced that content, has mastered the art of moving very, very smoothly. So at the time, he wasn't using a gimbal, you know, these kind of motorized handheld mounts that you can buy. I think he's acquired one since then, and then using some external microphones. The piece was filmed using an app called Filmic Pro, which we'll talk about today. And then it was edited on a Mac desktop using Final Cut Pro. But you don't have to do that. Even then, you don't have to do it. You also don't have to do it now. So you do have options. There are also vertical stories. So we do see the rise of the vertical format for content that's purposed for Instagram stories, Facebook stories. I think even LinkedIn has stories now, although I'm not sure who's using it. Also, YouTube will support vertical formats, etc. And so the smartphone is really optimized, I think, for creating that content as well as viewing that material. And we've got a couple of examples there. I won't play these out. I just want to mention that the one on the left was filmed using Filmic Pro and then edited using an app called Luma Fusion, which is an iOS-only app using an iPad. So it's really horses for courses with that one. Luma Fusion costs about $45, which seems like a lot for an app. But then if you contrast that with what it costs to buy Filmic Pro, which is nearly $500, then you start to get a sense of, well, perhaps this is a good way to go. These are obviously decisions that you will make for your business. It's possible to make a podcast using a smartphone, including everything from start to finish now. There's I'm not digging into this in this class, but there is an app called Anchor, as in drop anchor, so ANCHOR, that will allow you to not only make, but distribute your podcast to all of the usual platforms like iTunes and Spotify. The other one there on the left is one called Black Mirror Cracked, where some of the content was recorded using a smartphone. It is good enough for TV. This is a moment where I do want to show you something that it's just a little mashup that I made a couple of years ago, which is, let's just minimize this for a second, two stories made by different outlets about the same guy. So this gentleman, Lenny, runs a service, a pop-up service for aged care homes in Ireland, where he goes in and has a jukebox and then plays that while he's cutting people's hair. Both the BBC and the Irish broadcaster RTE did this story. The BBC did it on a very expensive camera and post-production software, and RTE used a smartphone and Luma Fusion. So just have a quick look at this. It's only a minute long.
My name is Lenny White, and I am a mobile barber for those living with dementia. It's a pop-up barber shop where it's very sensory. The likes of the jukebox, I'll play music, and that's very good for people who are living with dementia to sing along to the music. It brings back different memories from times gone by. I will spray the room with lemon cologne. I will put on my jukebox, which plays all the old music like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. They're coming into the barber shop and it's bringing back the memories. It's more than just a haircut or a shave. There's so many men living with dementia that find it hard getting to the barber shop. So this service is much needed.
So you just get
My name is Lenny White, and I am
what's possible. And I hope that what you found, I certainly find the experience of watching the square and the landscape format. That's really the main thing I notice in terms of engaging with the content and the story. As long as you've got a solid story and you have some simple techniques and some quality apps and equipment, then you can really go for it. The sky is very much the limit. Okay, so to summarize that, smartphones offer us professional quality content at a very low cost. What do we mean by low cost? I won't play this out. I just would encourage you to watch the trailer. In 2016, again, the Irish broadcaster RTE, which has really pioneered the work in this space, made a 1-hour documentary for the equivalent of ABC TV, so for RTE1, filming and editing, filming on smartphones, editing on a desktop. It was called The Collectors, and it was about people who collect things. So one of the characters in that story was a woman who collects Coca-Cola memorabilia. And on the right-hand side, that's the price list for the equipment in that documentary. The reporter who made the story put it all on ThingLink. So I was able to just check what it cost. Most of that equipment will have gone out of date because it's 2016, but it just gives you an idea that including the Macintosh and a copy of Final Cut Pro, it was still less than $7,000 for a 4K, which means ultra high definition shoot edit system. When I last worked at the ABC in television, which was 2009, the entry level camera, just the camera, was 9,000 Australian dollars. So it's really changed so much in quite a short period of time. Oops, just do this. Yeah. So let's have a look at what comes on board with the camera and the microphone. The cameras, usually the rear camera, so not the selfie front-facing camera, but the rear camera usually has the best quality. This is the time when we start thinking about our smartphone as a professional capture device, as opposed to something that we send email and, you know, perhaps use other apps like WhatsApp. It's also a professional storytelling device. So it's worth Googling your phone to find out how many megapixels are in each of the cameras and use the best one, usually the rear one. Where the microphones are, most smartphones these days have at least 3. So there'll be one next to the earpiece, there'll be one near the front-facing camera, and there's usually one at the bottom. That's usually where you would plug in an external microphone, for example. And also how much memory. So if you've gone budget and you went for a 16 gigabyte phone, then you may need to move stuff off the phone more often if you're filming in high definition, because you'll start to chew up your memory quite quickly. If you've gone for 64 gigabytes or 128 gigabytes, then you've got a little bit more latitude to store more content before you have to drop stuff somewhere else. As I said, there are usually more than one microphone. So on the left there is an older iPhone. So I think that's a 6 or a 6S probably. Not to worry about it too much. Mostly you'll be plugging in an external microphone at the bottom. But I think just getting to understand what these devices, how they're put together and what they come with is useful for us. So some simple equipment. Top list, I would say these are the essentials, and then the things at the bottom are helpful. So non-negotiables, I think, are a tripod and a tripod mount, so that you can hold the phone steady without having to hold the phone steady. So you can do other things and it will be rock solid. There's a subtle difference between putting a phone on a tripod where it doesn't move at all, and that subtle movement that you can see, which is a bit of a giveaway for amateur work, or let's say non-professional work, which is not quite the same. An external microphone, if you get stuck, you can use your headset. So both your AirPods or your earpods. So this microphone that I'm using to talk to you right now, that's actually a broadcast quality microphone, and it will do just fine. A power bank is also a useful thing. I'd say non-negotiable, because if you're traveling and you're using your phone to do your Google Maps and then you're texting the person, where are you, blah, 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 you arrive and you're on 27% battery, that's not good. So a power bank will help you out. Helpful things include external lights. You might want to get a gimbal, especially if you're doing a lot of work where you want to follow people around. And an external lens will give you the option, for example, to do macro photography, or perhaps do a wide angle shot so that you have a bit more latitude to put things into your framing, but you don't need them. They're not essential. Can you get away without any of this? Yeah, you can get away without all of it except the microphone and the power bank. So if you're really starting out right at the very beginning, you can work without pretty much everything. Just a word on smartphone microphones, because a lot of people don't know, you know, the sort of kit that's available. You can get single clip microphones, dual microphones. So 2 microphones that plug into one port that then you might use an adapter like a lightning adapter or a USB-C adapter to pop it into your phone. Obviously your headset. There are some handheld microphones and wireless microphones available now for smartphones. If you get really stuck in that situation, you can use a second phone. So if you want to film someone from a distance, you get them to pop a phone into their pocket with a microphone plugged into it, record that audio, film them, and then you can do what's called redundant audio editing in post-production, which is too difficult to cover in a webinar, but I do teach it. But it's useful to know that you can do that. Okay, so don't worry about this too much. The PDF that Kerry and Bill will be sending you contain all of those links. So I put this slide in really just to give you an idea of the prices. And you don't have to spend that much on a tripod. I do have a Manfrotto tripod and I do recommend spending a bit of money on it. And the other thing that I recommend spending a bit of money on is the tripod mount. The newer one, it's only $14, but the nice thing about those is they have little rubber grips, so it won't damage your phone. And also it has a screw mechanism rather than a spring. So you really can control how tightly it's holding your phone without, you know, hearing that sort of noise and you think, oh. So I would recommend spending a bit of money on a mount. Okay. Are there any questions before I move on to the next bit? Any questions so far, Kerry?
No questions so far, but if anybody just wants to quickly unmute themselves, feel free to ask a question.
Anything on what we've covered so far?
Okay, Dennis has asked one. Are Bluetooth mics okay?
At one point in when I was working at Sydney Uni, my students said, we're going to get you a t-shirt that says "It depends" because it comes out of your mouth so often. So the thing about a Bluetooth microphone, the situation where you might use that for this particular kind of storytelling, where you're filming people in relatively close proximity, or you're filming yourself, or you're gathering some narrative footage to put together to tell the story of your work. If you have a Bluetooth microphone, great. Do you need it? No. If you're going to do some filming where you might be moving around a space and you don't want to have cables everywhere, then a Bluetooth microphone might help you.
All right, thank you. We've just got
I
another.
personally don't own a Bluetooth microphone. Yep.
One more. How do laptop cameras compare with smartphone cameras?
Not well, actually. This is sort of, it's a bit outside of the scope of this class, but for example, there are apps that you can use to connect your phone to your computer so that you can use that instead of the actually rather average camera that's in most laptops. Even the most recent, I think, Macintosh laptops don't come with a high definition webcam in them, which is disappointing. I've got an external webcam plugged into my Mac for exactly that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we go on?
That's all the questions for now. Thanks.
Okay, super. Awesome. So some points on apps. Most of these will be, some of them you may have heard of, most will be, I hope, new. So for photography, so I'll do these two separate ones, so iOS first and then Android. For iOS, if you're doing a lot of photography, it's worth investing in a photography app. The reason is that it gives you the ability to do things like shoot in RAW files, which are the massive, massive files, but you might want that. And also, it will allow you to film in landscape format. So we know that our computers and our flat screen tellies are in 16:9 format. The old photography format was actually 4:3. And that's how most native cameras on the phone will shoot, right? So it'll come out a little bit squarish. And then you have to crop it to put into a 16:9 video. But if you're going to use lots and lots of still images, you might as well frame it up the way it's going to look. And so spending $14 so you never have to reframe or crop is worth it. You also get control over things like iOS and white balance and, sorry, iOS. Oh gosh, ISO, ISO, not iOS, white balance, etc. For filming, you can use your native camera. If you're on an iPhone 7 and above, or a Samsung S8 equivalent or above, the camera is pretty good. So for iPhones though, if you want to just have that bit more control, including control over things like color temperature, so you want all of your shots, even the ones in the morning and the daytime, you know, morning shots look a bit blue and late afternoon the light's a bit golden, and then you're filming in the middle of the day. If you want to adjust the color temperature, Filmic Pro allows you to do that. Video editing, everyone's, you know, we all know about iMovie. If you know how to use iMovie, I really want you to delete it from your phone today and download a free alternative app called VN. It stands for Vlog Now. It was released last year and it's amazing. It's the one I teach all the time, and the other reason is that it's also available for Android phones. Woohoo! However, it doesn't do everything. LumaFusion is the app that does everything. So Luma aims to replicate on a smartphone or an iPad. I probably do it on an iPad just because small screen, big fingers. But it will replicate most of the functions of Premiere Pro or Final Cut, including you could run off a podcast from LumaFusion if you wanted to. For audio, you have a couple of choices there. Ferrite is a smartphone-based multi-track editing app. So there's a little screenshot of it on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Or of course, we can all just go free to Audacity, which is works on Macs and PCs. So I don't think I would really recommend editing audio on a smartphone unless you're sort of into that kind of geeky stuff. I personally don't. I would just say use Audacity. Photo editing, Snapseed is a free app. A lot of folks are familiar with it. It's actually very powerful, so you can do quite a lot, including double exposures, which allows you to put a logo on your images, for example. And also, of course, cropping to 16:9 if you're using the native camera, so that you can then drop things into your videos. So it's a really super powerful app. For the Android folks, ProCam X is a good equivalent, does more or less all of the things that ProCamera does. For filming, Filmic Pro, again, one of the nice apps that's available for Android which solves some problems is called Open Camera. So it's free, it's open source too, so it costs nothing. And the great thing about Open Camera, if you don't want to spend money on Filmic Pro, is as well as giving you some nice manual controls, it tends to solve a problem that happens sometimes with Android phones when you plug in an external microphone and it doesn't recognize the microphone. So the native video camera is going, I don't understand, why is that? There's no microphone. Open Camera will recognize it for you. Video editing, again, VN is a great option and free, and it's actually better than KineMaster, which costs $5 a month. Audio editing, there isn't really a good option for Android. Forget it, just use Audacity. You can probably hear some cockatoos, by the way. I'm in the Southern Highlands, and this is the time of day where they all start flocking in the trees across the street. And then Snapseed. So that's just some apps there. Any questions about apps before we move on to 8 tips for filming success? No? Okay. No. Great stuff. Look, VN, it stands for Vlog Now. If you look it up on the internet, you'll find they have a really slick website. They also have a really good YouTube channel. So they have thought about this app very carefully. The app developers are based in Hong Kong, and I'm in conversations with them at the moment. I contacted them a couple of weeks ago and I said, why is this free? It makes no sense for this to be free. And they said, what we're planning to do is to put out a Mac version of this. That's how we hope we'll make our money. And the app we plan will always be free as a market entry for them. So that's super good news. And I've just joined the Mac beta. So over the weekend, I'll be trying that out. And that will be nice, because if it's better than iMovie, then that's really good news. Because iMovie is just, it's been around for a long time and it hasn't really been updated in any way. You can't add a logo to iMovie, for example. You can in VM, which is brilliant. Okay, so 8 tips for filming success, just some basic things to help you troubleshoot in advance, stuff that can easily go wrong. First of all, clean your lens. One of the pieces of equipment that I carry with me all the time, and I probably should have added to my list, was a glasses cleaning cloth. So our phones live in our pockets, in our handbags, in our backpacks, and the lens gets pretty unpleasant. So before you start filming, treat it like you would your DSLR or your pro camera and clean the lens. Those 2 shots taken 10 seconds apart of my backyard a couple of years ago. The one on the left is before I cleaned the lens and the one on the right is after. Getting the light on the subject, super important. So these are actually 2 stills from the same video. When you're filming against a window or the window's behind someone, they will go into silhouette. That's the first thing that will happen. The second thing that will happen is that the camera sensor will go, oh my gosh, I'm going to overexpose. So you get 2 problems. Both of them are impossible to fix in post-production. So just taking 2 steps to the left so that the subject is nicely lit will really solve a lot of problems. And I do also see that quite often on Zoom, for example. So if you've got a window behind you, you're just asking too much of these cameras. They're not Hollywood cameras. Even my Logitech is not a Hollywood camera. And so just thinking, where's the light? I also right now have a ring light behind my laptop, which is compensating for the fact that I've got 2 room lamps in here and they're both pretty yellow. So just thinking a little bit about the lighting. The ring light was 20 bucks on eBay. So good. You know, I mean, compared to TV lighting, which is thousands of dollars. Filming in landscape is a good idea. So rather than holding the phone vertically, if that's your habit, try to get out of that habit and just rock your hands to the left or right so that you're filming in landscape. The reason is you can crop from landscape to square or vertical relatively easily. But if you're cropping a vertical shot, you are necessarily zooming in on it. You can't, there's no other way around it. So the lady on the left, we can make landscape shots out of her face, the middle bit or her legs, for example. I've chosen her face on the right, but you can see zooming in pixelates it. So it really limits your options if you're filming in vertical. Stabilizing your shots, super important and not that hard. So if you don't have a tripod, for example, you could cut some slots into an egg box and put that on a bookshelf and use that. Like, as long as the audience can't see it, doesn't matter, right? They can't see that I'm using an egg box. I do also have, like, the cheapest tripod I own is something that I bought from Officeworks in a panic because I left my professional tripod on a holiday, left it at the holiday place, and I had to fly the next day. So I just grabbed something cheap, 15 bucks. But the thing is, even though it's horrible, and you can hear it, even if you can't see me, every time I use it, I'm pleasantly surprised that it's still working, but it will sit solidly on something, and that's all I need it to do. If you are sort of filming something, try and hold your arms firmly against your body and hold the phone with both hands. So the picture on the left, it's really hard to hold your phone level as well if you're just holding it with one hand. So it looked cool, makes you look like you're in the Instagram set, but actually you're guaranteed to get a bad result if you hold your phone like that. Locking focus and exposure. So focus, I think we all know what focus means. It just means things are in focus. It makes it look sharp. Exposure is the amount of light entering the camera and hitting the camera sensor. And if you've ever gone from a dark environment into a light environment, let's say if you're walking along, you'll see that your phone suddenly adjusts a lot to compensate for that. If you're doing a following shot where you're walking along with someone and they go from inside to outside, then you would leave the focus floating so that it just copes with that. But if you're doing an interview or filming yourself inside in a static shot, right now outside my window, it's cloudy, but if the sun comes out, the light will change and then the camera will adjust for that. And so I'll have two different sort of light effects, if you like. Let's say I want to make an edit and cut the middle bit out of my long diatribe. When I edit those two bits together, one will be darker than the other. And I could have fixed that by locking my exposure. Yes, my face might be a little bit darker, but at least I don't have that kind of wah-wah effect going on in the background with the light. So focus and exposure. On an iPhone, you do that by long pressing the screen. You just hold your finger down on the screen until a little AEAF lock yellow box comes up. On Android cameras, I've taught lots of people who use Android phones. They don't always have the ability to lock it, which means using open camera. So one of the functions in open camera is the ability to lock your focus and exposure, and also treat them separately, right? So you can focus on one thing, but expose for the light that you want, if that makes sense. And then you can lock it and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Zooming with your feet. So the phone zoom, when we use two fingers to kind of zoom in, it is digital typically, not optical. You do get some optical zooms, which just means the camera will actually zoom physically a little bit on the latest iPhones, but it's still only kind of a 2x zoom. You get an optical zoom of up to 10 times on some digital cameras, but that's helped along with really clever internal computer stuff. So it's getting better and better and better, but you will get better results if you move physically closer to your subject. The picture on the left is, you know, it's a distant, these two ladies are the distance away from us of you know, strangers. We don't know who they are, but the gentleman's face on the right is how we are when we're in a close conversation with someone. And so getting those closer shots really brings your storytelling to life. On a smartphone, a super close-up shot is actually pretty close to someone's face because it's a fixed lens. And so just having a conversation with someone to put them at their ease and say, listen, I'm just going to capture some, you know, wide shots and some medium shots, but also a couple of close-ups, and the phone will be quite close to you. Is that okay? As long as you have that permission, then you can work quite well. 7, use an external microphone for all interviews. So I adore Maggie Beer. We watch quite a bit of The Cook and the Chef on replay on SBS in this house. So Maggie's been doing a fantastic series, which is all about cooking at home. And I just want you to, when you get a chance, to have a listen to the link that's in the PDF that I sent, because typically those videos are not mic'd. There's not an external mic used, which I find really interesting. And I have written to them and say, listen, if you just get a wireless mic, that's going to be awesome. But I'm mentioning this for 2 reasons. One is, this is a great shot. This is exactly how we imagine Maggie Beer. And you wouldn't know that it was filmed with, some of it's done with a DSLR and some of it's done with a smartphone. But because the audio isn't as good as it could be, it's noticeable, right? If you remove those things that make people realize that it was filmed on a smartphone, they'll never know. So use an external mic for everything, and you'll find that the quality of your content and also the engagement of your audience with you will go up. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of this. I know I've got about 5 minutes before my 15-minute mark. Is that right, Kerry? Yeah, okay, cool. All right. So short discipline shots. We're not on holidays. We're capturing content that's going towards an edited piece. So first of all, you don't want your editing job to be a nightmare. You just want to know what's in the, what you see in the shots is pretty much what you've got to work with. So try to keep most of your shots static. Don't move around. If you're going to do a pan shot, which is a left to right or right to left, rehearse it beforehand and then start still and end still and then have a control motion and stop. But for your static shots, which should make up most of your shots, really you're thinking about 7 to 10 seconds for each shot of your narrative footage, because you're only going to use 3 or 4 seconds from each of those when you do the edit. Your homework tonight, when you're watching perhaps news or current affairs program, is to count how many seconds each shot you see is on screen. You'll very rarely see a shot that's not an interview that's on screen for more than 4 seconds. So that means lots and lots and lots of shots that are relatively short. A 1 minute multi-shot package, like the ones that we see on the TV, 15 to 20 shots, typically, minimum. 1 minute 30 package, which would be a longer package on TV, is usually 30 to 40 shots. It's a lot. So how do we not do our heads in with that? Well, first of all, vary what you get. Our eyes experience the world in a wide angle. We see everything in wide angle. So we actually have to think, don't forget to get some close-ups. You should aim for at least roughly 3 times as many close-ups as wide shots. That's a good rule. And it was just, at least while you're practicing, go, okay, well, I've got a wide shot, so what can I get 3 close-ups of? Captures detail, connection, and emotion. Medium shots are kind of the conversational distance shots, 3 or 4 of those. And then wide shots. So you might want something from outside the building and then something from inside the building in the room to just give a sense of context. Where are we? Sequences are a type of shots. They're typically 2 close-ups, one of hands, one of eyes. If you Google 5-shot sequence or look it up on YouTube, you'll find a million tutorials about this, right? It's just a very basic form of visual storytelling. So close-up of the hands, close-up of the eyes, a medium shot that tells you where the person is, an over-the-shoulder shot that connects who they are, what they're doing with where they are, and then perhaps a creative angle from somewhere else. These kinds of shots are always static. You're never moving around, and you can edit them together. And the great thing about that is that if this person is saying, well, I really love drawing. I've been drawing since I was 11. It's my passion in life. You can get, let's say, those 5 times 3 or 4 seconds to cover that over while the interview is happening. So you've got something else to look at on screen apart from their face. Quick thing on filming interviews, choosing a location that suits the story is really important. So it needs to be well lit. That's the main thing. So if the story is the basement, then you need to think about some bright lights to light the basement. Always prepare 5 questions. Thinking about 1 minute roughly equals 1 answer. Try to ask open questions when you're doing interviews rather than yes or no questions. So you wouldn't say, do you do this? Yes. It would be more, well, how do you feel when you do this? And what's your favorite thing about doing this? That will give you a nice effusive answer that will go on for about a minute. And practice with friends and family. These are the shots that we are most familiar with regard to interviews. So the ones at the top are medium close-ups. Again, none of what I'm telling you is new under the sun. So another piece of homework is to Google interview shots. There's also a document that I can share with you that covers some of this stuff. But both the gentleman on the left and the gentleman on the right have not too much space above their heads. Their faces are in focus. The lens is lined up with their eyes. So you can see that it's not above them or below them. And the way that you can achieve that is to ask them to look at something that's slightly off to the right of you or left of you while you frame them up. And then you move your body to sit in that spot once you've framed them and focused them and locked your focus and exposure and put a microphone on them and press record. Then you move your body. Just make sure that your body suddenly doesn't wind up being above them or below them, because they, instead of looking where you ask them to look, they'll look up or down, which will be disappointing. So that's just the basics of filming interviews. Again, it's not rocket science. I practice quite a bit with friends to get good at this. And then of course I've recorded quite a lot of teaching materials over the lockdown. And I often interview my mum. She's used to me asking her to do these things now. So just ask a family member and then practice. Okay, planning your story. This is literally the last little bit. Think about who your characters are and how they will tell the story. And what activities can you film? So The picture on the left is the classic grip and grin. This is what we don't like in journalism, is stories that could be about nothing. Could be, we don't know who these people are. So both these stories are about bird conservation, the one on the left and the one on the right. So thinking, what can I film? Where are we going? What sorts of props do they have? What sorts of objects will help tell this story? And then wide shots, medium shots, close-up shots, and an interview. And you're good. You can do all of that on your phone. Okay, I think this is my last slide. A shot list will help you remember to film your key shots. So just making a list before you go somewhere, or making a list if you're going to do some filming at your office or your place of work, make a list. It's like a shopping list. Okay, I need a couple of wide shots. I need some activity shots of people doing some narratives, you know, some wide things, medium close-ups of doing an activity. I might do a sequence once I feel comfortable. And I also need to film some objects to support the story that I'm telling. And I need an interview with that person. Typically, if you're going somewhere, allow about an hour to do all of that the first time you do it. You may get out of it faster the next time, but at least an hour. So you've got time to get plenty. Always film more rather than less. Okay, so next steps. Practice makes perfect. We're going to jump into a discussion in just one moment. So the topic I want to ask you guys is, what stories can you tell, and what would you get? So we can talk about troubleshooting. I'm going to run some classes in October that will dig into some of this stuff. So I'll pop that up on the L&D Marketplace when it's ready, to sort of dig into some of these things, so it's not just such an information dump. And of course, you can drop me an email in between now and then if you're interested in that, or you have any questions. So without further ado, that's it.
Wonderful.
And I've left 12 minutes for questions. Woo.
You have. Well, while everybody's thinking about their questions, Con posted one a few minutes ago. So he was asking about live streaming. What apps do you recommend for live streaming to YouTube? Okay, so luckily, I've actually done some research on this. I'm quite interested in StreamYard. StreamYard seemed to do most of the things on the tin, as in it seemed to be relatively intuitive. Another one that I haven't tried yet, I did test StreamYard with some friends because I was advising a conference on which platform should they use. And in the end, they decided not to bother, and they just used Google Meet, I think. But another one that I have heard really good things about is OBS, which I believe is free. Yeah. So the cool thing about StreamYard, though, is that it allows you to stream to more than one social platform at a time. So you can send the same stream to Facebook and YouTube, and I believe some others as well. Okay, that's all the questions we've got in the chat box. But if anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask, just please unmute yourself.
Great, it's Con. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, thanks, Con. How you doing?
Closed captioning. Closed captioning, we didn't mention that. I think research shows about 8 out of 10 people look at videos with the mute button on because they're in an environment where they can't listen to sound. First of all, do you think it should be done? So certain apps allow you to do live closed captioning, some allow you to do post. What do you recommend? And also, do you know any good apps that does it well, do it well?
Yeah, so the reason I didn't mention it was this is really more about filming short package content. But with regard to closed captions, it depends. One of the things I would recommend, though, is have a think about, what am I trying to say? I don't think burned in captions, you know, when they're sort of burnt into, they're saved as part of the video. The problem with those is that they don't cater to people who are visually impaired. So they can look really cool, but we're not catering to our friends who are visually impaired. So you can set them up in post, like when you post something to YouTube, it will allow you to do closed captions. And I have to say, even though they're not very pretty, I tend to turn them on in YouTube for that reason, for an accessibility thing. Oh, no worries, Fran. Did you guys, I mean, just generally, did you find that useful?
I have a question, and yes, found it useful.
Yeah. Oh, good. That's good.
May I ask a question?
Of course, please go ahead.
So I'm pretty okay with being on video and doing those sorts of things, but the biggest thing that I find is there's getting started and then all these apps and gadgets and whizzes that you've suggested, and there is a bit of a gap, and I love that you're going to be putting something on the marketplace. But if there was one thing you would want every single person here to do within 24 hours that included creating something, what would that be?
Okay, I'm actually going to would say two things within 24 hours. So the first thing is, oh gosh, it's so fun. It's so fun because it's so empowering, right? So the first thing I think is to practice doing some three different kinds of shots. So in the room where you normally work, think about filming a wide shot, then a couple of medium shots, and then some close-up shots. Just so you've got 3, you know, and so that you wind up with 5 to 7 shots of about 7 seconds each that you can play with. And the second thing I would say is download VN and watch the sort of introduction to using this app tutorial, right? There are tutorials on there that are very short. The thing is, Sally, the only way to learn this stuff is to practice it, right? If there was a chip that downloaded everything that people who do video filming and editing knew and could just do it, then we would all know it. But the great thing about those tutorials is they're super short. It is intuitive. It's the most intuitive app I've come across. Kerry and Bill downloaded it yesterday. What was the first time what were your thoughts, Kerry?
Oh, to be honest, I just downloaded it. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, so probably
Okay.
Bill's the best person to ask.
Same with me.
I mean, have you guys used iMovie before, Sally? Have you ever used iMovie?
Oh yeah, iMovie. I'm all over KineMaster, or however you say it, in iOS, and so I don't mind that. I find that to be a nice layering tool. So I'm pretty keen to look at VN as well. Yeah.
If you've managed to master KineMaster, I absolutely promise you it'll take you half an hour playing with VN to go. Oh, yeah. All right, let me rephrase. If you're familiar with the interface KineMaster, then you will be happy and fine with VN. It's very simple.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think just start film. Look, really seriously, shoot something that's just fun, and then find the youngest relative in your family that's the least judgmental and show it to them. So the way I practiced getting good at video when I wasn't working for the ABC, and I wasn't allowed to pick up a camera at the ABC, it would have been a union issue, right? I learned to film with a smartphone because we had someone whose job that was. So I used to make videos when I was in London for my nephews when they were little, and they didn't care. You know, they didn't judge me. So that I got comfortable with using the equipment and comfortable playing with the apps, and, you know, just do it for fun. And we're coming up to a long weekend. Film something this weekend and have a play around. You can't break it. That's the thing.
And I guess I want to come back to your point of, I want to just clarify that you said, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I've heard it wrong, that audio is like, make sure the audio is better than anything. Is that right? Like, does audio being better than video forgive video, or is that not quite right?
I see what you mean. I think you can get away with a not brilliant camera, as in, you know, the camera's not the latest thing. You know, if it's really out of focus, it'll put people off. But as long as you've made an effort. The thing about audio is something that is purporting to be a story where audio is important, whether that's music or speech. If it doesn't work, it's very disappointing. And if you're struggling to hear it. So, but literally, I mean, you know, I'll just unplug this for 1 second and you'll hear the difference. So that's without the headset. It's me talking to the desktop. That's with the headset. And it's that headset which can be taken out of my ears and held like that and used to interview someone like this.
I used to hang it over my
Okay, wait, I can't hear you. I've just took it out of my ears.
I used to, when it was just me, I'd hang it over here, so I didn't have it in my ears. So I'd just hang it over here for myself when I wasn't interviewing.
Yep, you can do it like this. Like that.
Yeah.
So that will also work. You know, if you wear, just keep in mind, you know, it's not a bad idea to wear a shirt with some white in it, so it's not too obvious. But it's actually not that obvious. People don't. It's amazing how people don't see it, but they will hear it if you're not wearing one.
Question though, so I'm going to hand back to Bill.
I've just got Berenice has been very observant. She's noticed that there's a camera behind you. So I'm just trying to go back to where it was. About the tripod
here.
behind you.
You mean that?
Phone. What is the square above it? Is it a light? Yeah.
It's a light. That is so in the PDF that I've sent to Kerry and Bill to distribute to you guys, this is the light. It's 2 AA batteries. It's got a little dimmer, so it'll click on and then it'll, hang on, let me bring it forward. So it's got a little dimmer on it. It's made by a company called Ulanzi. It doesn't have, like, it's $15, right? So it didn't have fabulous filters and all the rest of it, but it's better than, my mother would say, it's better than a smack in the head. It'll light what's in front of it. Or you can take it off and rest it on something else, so you can provide some bounce light. For example, if I don't have the ring light on, the window's right here, but this side of my face is a bit dark, so I could maybe put it over this side to light my face. Yep. The tripod that it's on it's a Manfrotto Be Free, which I got as conference merchandise from somewhere. It was about, but I think you can buy them for about $90, something like that. It's quite posh, but you don't need to spend that much money. That's an old iPhone 4S, which you can get for very little money these days. I just have it. And then that's the tripod mount that I mentioned. So the reason I like it is that it has a level, spirit level, so I can tell if it's off or not.
Right,
any tips for looking down the barrel? Oh, absolutely. Best tip ever. Oh, that's good because we've got a minute. What you do is you take a teeny little snipping of Post-it note and you put it right next to your lens, because I have the same problem. My lens is, my phone has got a dark thing, if you can see that. So the lens is somewhere in there. So you just take a tiny piece of Post-it note and stick it right next to the lens, and you'll never look away from it again.
All right, one last one. Irene was asking, would you suggest any different methods if filming on an iPad, because it's heavier and it's harder to hold? Any tips?
The main thing I think with iPads is that if you put them on a tripod, they tend to behave a bit like a sail when there's a wind. So the main thing is, the principle is the same. You just might need to spend a bit more money on a tripod, because the more expensive tripods are heavier. The other thing too is I wouldn't, all of this is predicated on you working by yourself, right? If you can enlist the company of someone to film with you, that makes everything so much easier. So having someone hanging on to the tripod, for example, but no, the principles are the same. And most of the apps that work, Filmic Pro will work on an iPad. Most of these apps will work on iPads.
Right.
Just on that point, I know Matt Mason uses
yes, Bill.
his iPad. It has a nice setup inside the his filming area. And Gerald, when he did his session, he showed how you could use the iPad and turn it into a teleprompter, which is also there. So again, there's different ways of looking at things. He also told us that him and a mate traveled all over Queensland and did the whole filming of it all with his iPad. So again, it takes that a little extra work, but I think it was mostly handheld kind of stuff. So good stuff. Corinne, thank you very much for that. I found that really fascinating and interesting, and I think it really does add to the stuff we want. So there you go. Super clap.
Oh, that's my pleasure. Sally, to your question, and if anyone else on the call wants to do this, you know, if you film something and pop it into YouTube as a unlisted link and want to send me the link for some feedback, I'd be really happy to do that. I do that with a lot of people. I mean, you know, just within reason. Like, I don't want to watch a 1 hour documentary, but if you make like a 2-minute package, I'd love to look at it and give you feedback.
So I can't send you my whole channel. Just kidding.
Good stuff.
Thank you. But thank you.
Corinne, again, thank you very much.
I can take a look at a couple of things. So you've got my email. My pleasure.
All right. And thank you,
I'll
everyone.
just my video, but I'll put my details into the chat for you.
Thank you. What I want to do now is I want to turn the session over to Sally to talk to us about something that I'm excited about, and I know Carrie and Sally are, and that is the new ILP certification for certified virtual facilitators. And Sally has actually done that process and is our assessor for it, and has had, you know, I think some good feedback for us. So Sally, I'll turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about what the certification is about, maybe what happens as part of the assessment, and the value and benefits that you've seen from that kind of certification, and share that with our members.
Thanks, Bill. So I came to ILP having already a badge from another platform per se. I'm a certified virtual speaker, and I saw that badging process as being two things. It gave market confidence that I can deliver down the barrel of a lens and in a virtual environment. And in no way, shape or form did it assess my ability to be a professional speaker. And so I got onto the phone with Kerry and we had a bit of a chat about, given what's happened in our marketplace, given that most of our time right now is down the barrel of a lens in some form or fashion, this is something that I think that we could do in APILP, where our facilitators could also look at getting themselves badged to be certified virtual facilitators. And again, it's not about assessing your facilitation. That's another assessment that you can do with ILP, and highly recommend you do that. And there's a deal going with that. Kerry's good with the deals. The badge itself, I believe, holds up in a marketplace that says to decision makers, okay, this person has jumped through some hoops and jumped some hurdles and knows how to handle themselves on the technology, knows how to pivot, word of the year, pivot to create a dynamic learning experience from a virtual platform. And also the other thing that, and I did a little bit more research around this as well, is that one of the things that this badging process can do is actually give you confidence as well. You know, once you go through this process and you have that badge that says, I can do this, I do believe it gives you a little bit of confidence in how you can move forward. And you're not just delivering face-to-face in places where you can, but you also, knowing that we're about to head down a hybrid world, and I think that's going to stay, then you can actually have the badge there, and you can go to your clients with saying, look, I can offer this in 2 different formats. And as we know, travel budgets will get tighter and tighter. So you've got that opportunity to put this forward to your clients and say, look, I can do local and I can do global because I am certified to be able to deliver a virtual experience. I'll just, can I be made host, and I'll just get up the page, if that's all right. I also think this badging gives you recognition in the broader, thank you, in the broader environment of learning and development, because it shows the marketplace that you're staying current. It also shows your commitment to the industry, in addition to everything else you're already doing. But I also think that acknowledgement of you demonstrating that continuous improvement, that it's not just the facilitation, but it's the ability to use a platform and deliver virtually, I think is really critical. So I'm just going to jump into the website, and I'm going to give you a very messy desktop. So no, we're not going to do that. There it is. Share. So the actual assessment process is very little to do with your facilitation skills. We might cover a little bit of it, but it's more about, is your space and where you're facilitating from got really effective lighting? We can see you. There's the right amount of lighting to make sure that you can be seen clearly. The audio, as you heard before, and I was asking that question about audio with Corinne, I think you need to be heard clearly. You know what it's like. You've been on, say, some webinars, or you've been on an online coaching or online facilitation process. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is it all right? We need to make sure our audio is in check. Your video background. For the actual assessment, I really would encourage you to not use a virtual background. Use a standard background that you have, or move to a wall or something like that. I don't want there to be any virtual backgrounds because it will be distracting, and we can have a look at it inside the assessment, but come on without a virtual background on. And we'll talk about green screens if you want to with that too. Your composition, making sure that you've got a middle third, that you've got a good distance, that you're using the space appropriately for what you do. And we will cover different angles with that as well. We want to make sure you're fairly well centered. If it's a head to camera conversation, you've also got space for flip charts and be able to maneuver yourself without it being distracting and being annoying for the learners. Some of the engagement tools, we'll probably do a bit of a run through. I'll ask you what you use and how effective it is and what happens with the tools that you use. Not necessarily for any other reason, but just to get that sense of confidence that you know what you're doing. And from the technical side of things, what I will be asking to do is to find out your network, so your bandwidth, and making sure that it reaches at least the minimum speed. And welcome to third world internet in Australia. Doing your best. I would encourage you to be hardwired in where you can, and I'll go through a process with you to show you how to find out what that is, and we'll record that, as well as how well you recover, because we all know we can set up and be on early, and we can test and tweak and do all sorts of things, and the minute we go live, something could drop out, and it's about the recovery. The dropping out, I don't care about. It's how well we recover. And so we'll have a look at what your plan B is for recovery. Now, if you have any questions about any of those elements of the assessment, please let me know. I wonder if there's any questions at this stage about the assessment itself. It's $97 plus including GST, and it's all online where you can, I'll just scroll down here. Where's the steps? I've missed the steps. You basically book in a time, and then we run through the assessments. We block off 30 minutes, but I've done one in 14 minutes. So it's not hard. It's more a process of, let's make sure we've got all these elements, and we tick you off and you're good to go. Any questions? Have I missed anything? Anything you think I should have told you and I haven't told you?
Sally, can you sort of share, because obviously we give you the digital badge, which you've got up on the screen there, but you said that's helped you attract a couple of clients that have noticed that?
Yeah, so within days of me doing the process, I actually had someone reach out and say to me, what does this mean? And so I explained it to them, and they said, okay, so how much of this do you do? And I said, well, I've been doing it for years. And they said, oh, well, I really saw your badge. So that's actually led to work. And I've actually had an email this morning saying, I'm loving your badges. Can we learn more about this? And so again, it'll be, I'm actually going to be delivering presentation skills online, which is not what I normally do, but the badges at least are creating and being seen. And I think that's one of the biggest things as well, that gives the marketplace the confidence and the curiosity to reach out and ask.
I think, Sally and Carrie, that's one of the key elements of the ILP's certification programs, and why we've changed them, to be able to identify that and help people to stand out from the crowd and differentiate themselves in this, as I've said in these master classes before, where we now are faced with a bunch of people who are out there doing things and they're not doing it very well, which can bring the industry down. But we also have a much bigger audience that we can go after these days, a much bigger marketplace, global, by doing this online. But it also means that people in other countries can come in and do it to our clients. So if we're not professional about it, and if we're not demonstrating that we're professional about it through things like the certifications and other things, then there's a risk that we'll drop down the lines a little bit, and that's a risk. I think relationships are still going to be the key element for us, but at the same time, differentiating ourselves and knowing that you've been peer reviewed gives you that extra confidence, as well as a range of other things. So, I think it's those things when they pile up, and it's one of the things that ILP's really wanted to focus on this year, because it's been such an interesting year.
Yeah, definitely. And you reminded me, Bill, and I'll come to your question in a second, Con. I previously to COVID, I was going into Kuwait every year because I've got a very strong relationship there and do a lot of work there. And when COVID hit, my boys in Kuwait, I call them my boys, they said to me, "Oh, well, what are we going to do now? You can't come." And I said, "Yes, I can. I'm online. Let's do this." And then when I got the certified virtual facilitator badge, I sent it through to them and they went, "What's this?" And I told them, and I said, "See, told you I can do this. I'm there, but I'm going to be here too," which means it's going to be about 2 a.m. in the morning. However, I haven't lost my client. I've maintained that relationship, and I've gone, I've maintained that global presence. So definitely. Con says, where did it go? Back up there. Do you need to be a CLC? Okay, what's the CLC one first?
No, CLF
or
CLP.
Okay. I think we're creating a extra component to this assessment, so that if you aren't already a CLF, we might talk a little bit more about facilitation in your assessment. But you can do this separate if you want. We can always make that happen. Absolutely. ILP, from a member perspective, has always been about, creating the standards and making sure that we're reaching them. So if you're not a CLF, then let's have that conversation. I encourage you to do that. But we can always look at what you're doing in your facilitation now and see how it can match up and get you badged for the certified virtual facilitator.
Malcolm was also asking about and the tuition to get the required standard. And I think Carrie, Sally, that's something we'll talk about, because it's one thing to assess people, but how do we actually skill them up? A lot of the master classes have been going a long way to doing that, but potentially there is another process we can actually use to take people through that process. So we might have a conversation around that.
Absolutely. We can do one of these master classes, but just listening to your intro at the top of the session, Bill, go back to Gihan's stunning slides, look at Gerald's video setup, and go back and listen to the recording of today from Corinne and her PDF. Just those three alone, I'm sure if you spend a little bit more time going in them and have a practice run and watch yourself back after and record it and watch yourself back, I'm sure you're going to be fine. Okay. I think it's about remembering that the lens are the eyes of your audience, and remembering that you're here to serve your audience, and you can do this. If you're already a great facilitator, it's about the mechanism and the technical bits. They can come along far easier. And I'm sure if you watched back just those 3 sessions of masterclasses we've had, you'll be there, you'll be fine. And we'll do a masterclass if you want.
Yeah, the other thing you can do is go to the ILP capability framework and do a free assessment just to see if you're at that level. But the other thing is feel free to give myself or Bill a call, and we can sort of chat you through the process and what we look for. Because particularly with the certified learning facilitator, it's not just demonstrating your facilitation skills, it's having a look at, well, how did you determine what the stakeholder needs were, what they're expecting, what the learner needs are, what you do to support the learners to get them ready for the learning, and also then to support them after the learning. So we're sort of taking that holistic approach with our certifications.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to delineate that what Kerry's talking about is a certified learning facilitator. This is the virtual side of it. This is just one little part that you can badge up, and I highly recommend it. As Okay, if for nothing else, it's a great marketing tool to prove to the marketplace that you are good at doing this virtual work.
Yeah. Any other questions at this stage? Con's asked if there are any prerequisites like a Cert 4 in TAE. Let's not go there, Con.
Are you stirring, Con? Are you stirring? You're stirrer. And I noticed, Con, that you're in Greece today, so you fired up from Greece. Any questions, any concerns? As Kerry said, you can have a chat with Kerry and Bill, but you can reach out to me as well, Sally at Sally Foley Lewis. I'm the type of person that goes, if I can do it, anyone can do it. But I do get that there are sometimes bits that you've got to get over yourself to get onto this and doing it. It's not as hard as you think. It just does take a little practice, and you do get there. And I have to totally agree with Corinne. It's not about having all the most expensive bells and whistles. I've done that mistake. I actually own 6 microphones now, of which I probably only needed 2. So, you know, you don't really need expensive kit to make it look good.
That's so
Sally,
true.
you can probably unshare your screen as well now.
Sure.
I remember Gerald was saying that he invested in a $4,000 camera. Now he just uses a webcam, a $20 webcam or something. So, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. We've still got a little bit of time, but so if there's any questions, but we're going hand in hand with this, Sally. I spotted something came through to me the other day. That's been asking, we've talked about in member lounges and other things about how to price online learning. So something came through from leadinglearning.com on this today. The article seems to have been done a while ago, but they may have refreshed it with the current things. But I know that's something that a lot of people, when they start to talk about virtual facilitation, is how do we price it? So I spotted that article today. So I just shared that in the chat area for people. And for those people who want to save any of the things, remember you can save the chat. Just go down to the bottom right-hand side where the 3 dots are and click Save Chat to save all of the stuff that's there.
Can I get one quick one in for Corinne, please?
Sorry, Con?
Can I get one more quick one in?
Absolutely.
To our guest?
Yep.
Cutaway shots. Now, first thing is we see a lot of news bulletins, they show cutaway shots and they show cameramen and reporters. Now, when doing a video for yourself, is it important to put cutaway shots in? Or is that sort of just to break it up a bit? What would you recommend?
Depends on what the video is for. But look, all right, so Con, have we got 2 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got lots of time.
Oh, cool. All right. Hello, everyone. Con, what would be a story about your work or business that you might tell?
How I got to where I am today.
How you got to where you are today. Okay, so you mean like a piece to camera type thing?
Yeah, piece to camera, but also maybe interviewing others that have supported me.
Okay, so you could just do that as a series of very straightforward interviews and just make sure that, you know, it's, I think Sally was asking earlier, have we got Sally still or is she chuffed off?
Yeah, she's still here.
Oh, there she is. She's right in the middle. She's below me, you know, the Brady bunch of Zoom. Anyway, she's the Alice to my Mrs. Brady. Anyway, one of the things that I do with my students when people are going, oh, yes, exactly. You know, where they don't, you know, we're just feeling concerned and nervous, right? It's to say, well, who watches TV? Yeah, well, I watch TV. Okay, so is this right or is it wrong? It's wrong, right? A framing, but also like that's wrong as well because I'm looking up. I mean, apart from the fact that you can't, you know, it just doesn't look very well. And that doesn't look good either because it's looking straight up my nose. Like it's not, this stuff isn't rocket science, really. You know, it's fairly simple and you'll film it. And the thing is, as adult, we all teach, right? So we all know with our trainees that they worry about getting something wrong. And I say, you know what, if my nephews had the first time they fell over on their face when they tried walking, if they'd gone, oh, you know what, walking, it's a bit overrated, it's not for me. no one ever does that. Kids learn fast because they're not frightened of making mistakes. So coming back to your question, Con, you know, you don't want way too much headline, but you also don't want to be above the thing. You want to be dead on with the lens, right? So look where the lens is, right? If it's above you, it's wrong. If it's below you, it's wrong. That's it. Now, with your telling the story of how you got there, maybe you've got some images that were taken along the way of your training work and the work that you've done, and you can upload those into the editing system of your choice, right? Which might be VN, but it might also be Final Cut. I don't know what you use. You know, like I use Premiere, and you know, but I learnt Premiere because I had to teach it at college, so that was fun. But you might drop those in when you're talking about something, right? Try to vary what's on the screen so that it's not up there for ages because it's boring. But you know, you don't also want to whip through it too fast. And just give it a go. If you don't have hundreds of photos and you've only got 10, well, if you think, all right, well, 10 times 4 to 6 seconds, the maximum I can get away with running a still image on screen is something like 10 seconds, maybe. But after that, it's dull. So that gives you, you know, if you've got 40 pictures times 10 seconds equals 400 seconds, your story can't be terribly much longer than that. Otherwise, it's got to come back to you on the interview screen. Make sense? You can do all that in iMovie, right? You just need to switch off the irritating Ken Burns thing, you know, that wow, wow thing that we get in Ken Burns, but you just tap on it to disable it and it goes away. And then just put Con with the text at the bottom. I mean, there's, you know, I think the thing that we have to remember to do quick, you know, most in iMovie is to switch off the crossfades, you know, because they look really 80s. Like the transitions from one shot to another, it's all a dissolve, cross dissolve. But you just tap on the little, well, what do you call it, the transition thing, and just select the straight line so that it's a nice clean cut. Just give it a go. Yeah, does that help?
Thank you. Yep.
That's okay. I mean, looking at where you're framed right in the middle of the screen, but you've got a lot of headroom above your head. So I would move the camera. Yep, keep coming forward. Come forward, 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 forward. Now bring your screen down by about a foot so that your eyes are in line with the lens. Yep, come forward a tiny bit more.
Can't come forward anymore.
Because you've got a desk in the way.
Yes,
that's okay.
exactly.
But that's better than where you were before.
That's right. Thanks.
Right? So now you're framed up more or less the way that Malcolm's framed.
I do.
And Irene has got herself framed in a nice medium close-up, right? See how it's just chopping her off at the top of... Yeah, no, but it's great. It's like just sitting at the top of the chest. Yeah? And Kerry could move her frame up a tiny bit. And Sally, you're about right. You've got a little bit too much headroom. And Debbie, you know, you probably would just need to think about putting you're on a laptop. So just put it on a pile of books. I don't know if I can do this without breaking things. Let me just see if I can. Oh yeah, I can. So let me show you what I've got. So it's on a coffee table book I bought in India and a shoebox. And then you can now see that we're in the spare room, and there's my ring light, which is switched off at the tick. Ta-da! Right? That's all recording, so the whole ILP will see my spare room. There you go. I hope that's making it feel better.
Because I got in late, I'm sitting on my couch with my second computer on a pillow in front of me so that I'm looking straight at the camera. But I also have a ring light as well as a new camera as well, which I got. And the next thing is the audio situation. Corinne, thanks again for that. Thanks for everybody with the questions. Been another great session in terms of what we're going to be doing. Again, we've got another great session coming up in 2 weeks' time, talking about artificial intelligence in learning and design of transfer of learning. Deb, do you want to tell us anything about Emma?
Emma's fantastic. I love Emma. I've been following her for many, many years. And became, I don't think we're close friends, but became very friendly with her probably about 3 or 4 years ago when we started working together in one of my past lives. and she's having phenomenal success with learning chatbots. Emma's story is all about, her focus is all about the transfer of learning and making sure that learning is actually applied after the event, which there's not a lot of that focus, you know, in many instances, and that's her entire being, so to speak. So she sort of accidentally came across these chatbot things, and then got curious and went down the path, and now I think chatbots is her entire life. She doesn't get a break from them anymore. So she's an absolutely fascinating person. She's got contacts all over the world now with this chatbot functionality, and she's just a wealth of information. So very worthwhile tuning into.
Good stuff. Okay, thank you for that. And again, we, as many of you will know, we also have our Friday member lounges. But definitely come along to those if you want to. They're always a good session. I may be missing this one coming up because I'm going to be driving to Mildura because I can. So we'll be seeing over. But is there any last questions? Why don't I just turn it over to Kerry to finish us up?
I was going to say, Bill, that's okay. Kerry's mastered the whiteboard, so we don't need you anymore.
Exactly.
Just joking, mate. We love you.
No, they're fun. And the other thing, just leading on from what Sally was saying about these masterclasses help build the capabilities. At the end of November, we're putting together a L&D capability showcase. So we're going to have a session on each of the 18 capabilities across the 6 dimensions. So it'll be a quick dip covering all the capability areas that you need to build to be successful as an L&D professional. So we've only decided to do that in the last couple of weeks. So we'll be drip feeding information and speakers and things like that. If anybody's interested in being involved, please let us know as well. So it's something to look forward to.
That's awesome.
Other than that, Corinne, thank you. The feedback that's coming through in the chat box about how it was full of tips and apps, and I think that's what everybody's craving at the moment, just to find out what the people that know, the experts, are using, and do they need to spend an awful lot of money. So thank you for being so generous with your time and all of your knowledge on what we should be using. So another round of applause.
That's great. I'm so glad. I'm glad to be able to. Oh, it came up as sold out. That's nice. It's nice to be able to reassure that you don't have to spend a lot of money. My mobile journalism equipment kit costs me. I've got 2 clip mics because I like to be able to interview 2 people, which cost me $25 each. And I've got a little splitter, which I've put in the PDF, which was $20. What's that, 60? I've got a tripod, which cost me a chunk, but that one up there that was $15 from Officeworks. That's kind of it.
All right, guys.
All right, guys. Thanks
for this
so much.
weekend. I've got another Zoom session to do right now.
Thanks, everybody. See you again soon.